Hi, welcome to this first video clip related to our Relational Leadership course. These video clips are intended to support your learning by exposing you to some of the introductory concepts that we'll be using in our course when we come together as a group. In this first video, we look at how we define relational leadership. For centuries, people have been trying to define what leadership is. And of course, what makes great leadership really depends on the context. Are we talking about a context of earthquakes? Are we talking about a context of the economy? Or are we talking about a context of education? Whether a leader is effective is defined by what we value in these contexts. For example, do we value saving the cathedral? Or do we value affordable housing? Or last, do we value educational opportunities for all? Whether the leader will be perceived as effective is a reflection of how well he or she demonstrates and can lead in a context that reflects what our stakeholders value. This course covers leadership in the context of healthcare. And although at times we will be looking beyond to stretch beyond this environment, we'll be looking to healthcare for examples. It's assumed that each one of you has individuals that you have relationships with. It may be your boss, your colleagues, and for many of you, you'll have direct reports, as well as the communities that you're associated with, both within the organization and in the wider district health area. All of these are relationships that you presumably value and that you want to add value to. In this short video, we use this as an opportunity to expose you to the foundations of relational leadership, what it means to organizations, and how it differs from other types of leadership. Following the video, you'll be asked to think about and reflect on specific questions related to relational leadership in preparation for our face-to-face time that will come in a few weeks. So in this short video, our first topics that we'll cover are defining relational leadership and what makes it effective. We'll look at the relational leadership model and what the behaviors are that a relational leadership demonstrates. And finally, how relational leadership differs in some ways from other types of leadership that you will have studied as part of your University of Waikato curriculum. So let's start first with what makes an effective relational leader. As we said, it really depends on the context. But in general, leadership effectiveness occurs when there are positive relationships with others. So going back to our 3 E's, earthquakes, economy, or education, leadership effectiveness occurs when the relationship is enhanced or used to leverage positive outcomes for that context. In our case, the district health system and the community, and ensuring that community needs are met. So being an effective leader requires that we understand what the system values, what the community and its subgroups want, and what they need to be successful. In this way, the leader is there to serve the needs of the team, the group, and the community. So in total, effectiveness is defined in relation to the context. What does your group value? What does your organization want? And what does your community need in order to be successful? Let's talk briefly now about the relational leadership model. One element of the relational leadership model is that it's people attempting to accomplish change to benefit all. The leader and his approach reflects what the values are of that group, and inclusiveness is an important value that is demonstrated, using the talents of the group to create positive change. It assumes that relationships are the building blocks of leadership effectiveness. So looking at our relationships and the values of the team in this way should help make the concept of relational leadership real, or in some way should help us operationalize the concepts by applying it to things we understand in our own context. So let's think for a moment about the context that we're in and the types of behaviors we would expect to see from a relational leadership leader. What would a relational leader look like? First of all, there are 5 cornerstones of the relational leadership model. The relational leadership has 5 cornerstones, foundations, or some people call it competencies. These are behavioral qualities that make up the practice of an effective leader by demonstrating in everyday interactions with others. Let's start with the middle of the list first. A unique quality of the relational leader is that they assume that there's a vision that others have bought into. Their goal is to create commitment towards that purpose. That common goal is geared towards a positive outcome. Having a common goal requires equal participation. So inclusiveness, our first behavior, is also an important behavior in being a relational leader. With inclusiveness, there's a focus on using we language that everyone understands, that people feel listened to, and that the diversity of the group is valued. We look for multiple perspectives, perhaps even outside the group that we're leading, so that people feel empowered to go outside the group, to ask questions, and then return to take up responsibilities and ownership for the group's success. Of course, success must be within the bounds of what the group defines as good, what they value. So outcomes typically with a relational leader are ethically driven, doing what's right through walking the talk and by leading by example. Overall, a relational leader is process-oriented. They are geared towards action. They are geared towards the how of the other 4 elements. How they define their goals, how they include others, how they empower people, and how they derive good results. So our last topic, how does relational leadership differ? The primary difference between relational leadership and other leadership models is the emphasis on self and shared leadership. Some of the challenges of leaders in the 21st century is that for years our organizations have been quite top-heavy in terms of leadership. In the 90s, people were saying that it was the end of an era for managers. Yet, even today, we still see that despite transformational and transactional leadership, that we still see organizations that are driven from the top down. Leadership in the 21st century has led to bottom-up pressures. With cost reductions, there's a requirement for empowerment. And people today want more relevance in their work. So there are 5 conditions for self or shared leadership. And the level of interdependence of the team, and we'll talk about this more in our class, is how urgent is the issue at hand. If the issue is quite urgent, it may not be appropriate to share the leadership role. If employee commitment is required, however, self-leadership and shared leadership may be essential. If you're seeking creativity and innovation, self-leadership and shared leadership is also important. And finally, if you're seeking collaboration and high levels of interdependence in getting the job done, shared and personal leadership are essential. And lastly, if you're working in a complex environment, shared leadership is important. In our course, we'll talk more about the how, the why, and the when of shared and self-leadership. If you've read the article on shared leadership that is in your course pack, you will be best prepared for our in-class discussion. This concludes our first module on relational leadership. I encourage you to work through now the questions related to the topic so that you're best prepared when we meet in class on the day. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.